phone case industry is one of the most polluting and worst I've ever seen. Think about it. There's like 1.5 billion smartphones made and sold every year. 80% of those are going to put a cover on the phone. So like 1 billion plus phone cases are bought every single year. But the way the industry works is all of those phone case companies, and they say, whatever we don't sell, you need to take it back because there's a new phone coming every 12 months. So the phone case companies actually wind up producing, somewhere between 2 and 5 times more cases than are actually sold. So like you're talking about billions of phone cases manufactured every year, and a good chunk of them actually just get literally burned. Like they just throw them in a dumpster and burn these things because they can't be recycled. All of this is because just like extended warranties, these companies make a lot of money selling phone cases. We have had no luck trying to get them to sell a better product and be less wasteful, and they don't care. They make way too much money selling phone cases to do the right thing. It is just about the bottom line. 100%. It's the worst industry I think I've ever seen.
About 2 big companies own pretty much all the relevant brands. One of them is, I think it's Vanguard, and there's not BlackRock. And those companies would have the power, in a heartbeat, in my opinion, to force economies in the world to be more sustainable. As a serial entrepreneur, I'm always trying to evolve. Having great conversations with other high performers is one of the best ways to grow. Not only in business, but also in spirit, health, and relationships. This is Svencast. Listen, grow, repeat. So we are live with Matt Bertulli. Matt, welcome.
Thanks, man. It's good to be here.
Thank you. You are Matt Bertulli, entrepreneur, investor, book author. You wrote a book about retail named Anything, Anywhere, the future of retail and how to build a digital-first roadmap to growth. You practically grew up in a retail business family, and that's what you have been focusing on most of your business ventures, including DMAC Media. You are the CEO at Pela Case, a company that focuses on eco-friendly, biodegradable phone cases, which is absolutely amazing in my opinion. It's a very good cause. And your personal mission is to keep 1 billion pounds of plastic waste from ever being made. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what drove you to that mission, and how did that
So
change?
I guess, I don't get asked that very often. The actual mission part, right? Everybody wants to know how'd you start the business? I like the idea, all that stuff, but where'd the mission come from? So my last company, DMAC Media, which we were in e-commerce and retail for about 11 years before I sold that company to a private equity group. And I had sold a lot of stuff, a lot of plastic, a lot of stuff over a decade. And, when I started investing in Pela about 5 years ago, I loved the idea. I loved the material that my partner Jeremy had come up with, right? That we make our cases and a bunch of product out of. And I liked the idea that you could basically provide consumers with an easy swap. So if they're going to buy this kind of product anyway, give them something that costs the same and, has a much better end of life and isn't going to stay on the planet for 500 years. Right. And then started to dream about what else is possible. So beyond just phone cases. Right. And then once you start doing that, you realize there's 16 million tons of plastic that enters the ocean every year. So 1 billion pounds really isn't that much. 1 billion pounds sounds like a lot, but it's really not that much. So I came up with that just because I wanted something that could rally our team and our community to shoot for some kind of audacious goal, right? To do better.
I see. And what makes you passionate about that particularly?
I live in British Columbia, Canada, and I live in a place called the Okanagan Valley. I'm an avid mountain biker, skier, hiker, lake life, all the things outside. So my my passion for what we do for work and sort of our mission and our cause, I call it's a just cause, just comes from living in a very close proximity to a lot of nature and wanting to do everything I can with the one life I have to make sure it stays as beautiful as it is.
Oh yeah, that's amazing because I used to live in different countries, and I tend to absolutely not really like the countries where people are just throwing away waste into nature. This is like that's what I, for example, love about Switzerland. It's so clean. I love Switzerland, so
BC is just like this. It's an unreal place to live. It is just stunning. I call it nature's greatest show. Like the mountains and the ocean, and the lakes, and like everything we have here. It would be a damn shame if we were responsible for destroying that. I figure it's a nice way to wake up every morning, man.
Absolutely. And do you want to, let's say, achieve your mission, the goal of your mission, just with phone cases, or do you have anything else in mind? In the future,
so we've got totally. I mean, we started with phone cases. We bought a personal care company, so we make like plastic-free deodorant, soap, shampoo, some skincare products. We also have a company called, a new brand actually it's launching this week called Sway, which is landfill degradable sunglasses, right? So like going after eyewear. And then about a few months ago, we launched a new product called Lomi, which you can't really see it, but there's this machine that sits over my shoulder here. But Lomi is a kitchen countertop appliance that takes your food waste and turns it into usable soil. It can also turn like our phone cases into usable soil. So
nice.
I'm attacking like all waste. Our mission for the company is like the way that we describe the future is like we're just trying to design waste out of the human experience, right? And the phone case was like just a great place to start.
Yeah, it's amazing, like how much waste is being produced. I'm actually really worried about, for example, the masks. Ever since the pandemic started and everyone's wearing masks, I keep like thinking every day, like, oh wow, like most people who wear the mask just one time, which is probably healthier than having bacteria grow there and fungus and stuff. But I really worry about, like this all going to the ocean. I don't understand in the first place. Why do people throw that into the ocean?
Well, people don't. So I think there's two things here, right? So like what you're hitting on is important. So during COVID, our plastic production and usage went up 500% in 1 year.
Shit.
So prior to that, we were actually making some progress, right? Of like cutting a lot of stuff out, but it shot up 500% because it's not just masks. It's like, think of the medical supplies, like all PPE. Restaurants went from, any restaurant or any quick service place anywhere that had like reusable options, utensils, stopped and had to start providing disposable. So like we immediately as a culture globally snapped back to single use everything because of the virus, right? The second part to what you just said. So people don't actually throw stuff in the ocean. So often what happens is things go to landfill. It goes to landfill, which are open pits and so landfills can blow around and you can get trash anywhere. You get a lot of trash that will run into the oceans via rivers. A lot of plastic that enters the ocean is like, there's some like really bad countries that have like poor waste management infrastructure, like developing nations. They're like the number one source for how it gets in there. So like, plastic entering the ocean from like a first world country, it's not the largest source, right? Nobody likes to see it though. I mean, now what happens is it doesn't matter if it's the source. It's still like people in California still see plastic wash up on their beaches all the time.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's super normal, even though, they're not the ones throwing it in the ocean. So
honestly, it freaks me out when I see that.
It is like I tweeted something yesterday that I fundamentally believe that all entrepreneurs are going to be climate entrepreneurs very soon, right? Like all problems are intersecting with climate, all of them. Like you pick a problem, like globally, just pick one, like racism, social inequality, hunger, like pick any real meaningful problem, and they all intersect with climate. Every single one.
Plastic.
So it all relates back to, like, we have one home, it's one planet, and as much as Elon is trying to get us off this planet, there's 7+ billion of us. We're not leaving anytime soon. It's worth, like, all those problems are worth solving.
Yes.
They're also massive economic opportunities, like huge.
Yes. This, I think the first thing would be like the thing that you just did, which is basically replacing stuff. You know, trying to replace plastic. And there's like already a lot of technology out there to replace plastic. You know, there's degradable, let's say disposable, forks and knives and stuff like that, and cups to drink.
Oh, totally.
Somehow, but most companies don't use it, and I honestly don't understand that really, because I think
it's super complicated. I mean, so biodegradables, compostables. So there's lots of different types, right? There's a ton of companies doing some very, very cool stuff in material science, right? And Pela, like, we've built a business on trying to find applications for those materials, where a lot of other companies just don't even want to try and use them. So the biggest challenge facing the adoption of biodegradables and compostables is lack of global waste management infrastructure for them. So like most people, you guys probably have like blue boxes, right? Like most countries have like recycling programs, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, put aside the fact that like 90% of plastic doesn't get recycled. Even if you put it in the box, it's still not getting recycled. Put that aside. Biodegradable plastics, compostable plastics, they can't go to recycling facilities, right? They need to go to compost facilities. Well, industrial compost facilities aren't exactly high in number around the world. Like, there's not very many of them. And those facilities make their money by making compost and selling it as fast as possible. So when you introduce plastics, like biodegradable plastics, into their business, it slows down their financial model, which means they don't make as much money. So compost facilities also don't want them. So what you have is super innovative materials and nowhere for them to go when people are done. Therefore, large, like really big companies, man, like think Procter & Gamble, Unilever, they don't adopt them because governments are like, well, you can't sell that here because there's nowhere for people to throw it out. So we're stuck in this weird, like, purgatory place right now where we have technology available to us. We know how to do this, but our infrastructure is outdated and we need to find a way to get that unlocked, right? That was the whole reason that we made Lomi, was not to, like, food waste is a big problem, yes, but we wanted to do what Elon Musk did with home car charging. So like putting an electric car charger in your home. We wanted to build a machine that you could put in your kitchen that when you got a compostable toothbrush or a razor or a packaging, you could put it in Lomi along with your kitchen scraps and it would all go back to dirt.
Oh, nice. How long does it take to degrade, for example, like a phone case or a toothbrush?
In Lomi, like under a day.
Wow.
Yeah. So think of that.
So
like we just went from 400 years, which is like 400 or 500 years, which is how long plastic will last, to a material that in the right environment can degrade, call it 70, 80%, 90% in under 24 hours. Like we can get it to a point where if you put that dirt in a garden bed, like in a regular soil, that it will nature will finish the job.
Oh wow, this is pretty amazing. Like how is that even like when I use it day to day? Does it also like fall apart or
no, not at all. Like that's the thing. Like these materials, some of the ones that we found, there's so many of them too. Like some of them are like anything else. There's a spectrum, right? So some of them are terrible, some of them are great. The ones that we use have really high efficacy. So like one of our cases, will last you as long as you want it to. Mm-hmm. probably longer than you'll have your current phone.
Yeah.
Right now,
yeah, sure.
introduce
sure.
it when you take this material and you introduce it to the right bacteria and the right heat and the right moisture and oxygen, and like you put it in the environment it's designed to degrade in, then it has a very graceful end of life. Right?
Yes. So like, do you have that environment in that Lomi thing?
Yeah, Lomi is basically like, have you ever seen like a backyard compost pile? Or like those big
Yes,
bins
of course.
that you put, like food waste in? Yeah.
Yeah,
Lomi is effectively like a hypercharged one of those, right? So we're using electricity, a bunch of sensors and software to like create the right, based on what's in there, to like monitor humidity levels, heat, abrasion, oxygen, and then we designed a little pill, which is like our own like it's a custom bacteria pill.
Mm-hmm.
So think of it like, you put like soap in a dishwasher.
Yeah.
Same idea, right? So you take this little pod and you throw it in Lomi along with your food and your compostable plastics, and that's the activator. So that's the bacteria, right? So now all of a sudden, like you've got this really great little environment to, like, while you sleep, this machine can run and it can degrade these types of materials like pretty effectively. There's actually a company based, I think it's out of Switzerland, called Tepa. So Tepa, they make like a lot of packaging solutions that are compostable. Mm-hmm. So like Stella McCartney, which is fashion label, they use Tepa poly bags to ship their clothing out in. Well, like we've tested those poly bags from Tepa in Lomi, and they go away. Like imagine your e-commerce packaging just going in a machine and going away.
Amazing.
Like it turns back into dirt. Yeah, like their product, I'm really impressed with Tepa. It's freaking awesome. I think they're in Switzerland. Yeah. That sounds. I'm terrible with places and names, so I believe they're in Switzerland.
Yeah, Switzerland is really innovative and really tries to take care about nature, and they want to preserve their beautiful landscape. And like unlike Canada or the US, like all the towns and cities are so, let's say, built in a tiny way. Everything is tiny. The roads are tiny for your car. Like everything's super tiny to use up the least amount of space in the environment. Yeah. It's hilarious. Like
we have so much land. We don't know what to do with it. Like that's our problem, right? Yeah.
I'm in Miami right now, and going through the US, it's such a difference. Like the space you guys have is just amazing. Like I love it, to be honest. Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty cool. So, how did you come up with that? I mean, there's a bunch of technology behind this, biotechnology, so to speak.
Yeah, we've been working on it for 3 years. So about 2.5 years, right? Is a little over that we've been working on this thing. So I mean, where it came from was just going back to the infrastructure thing. Like I approached my board and my investors, and I'm like, this is a huge problem. Like there is nowhere for these materials to go. And then we know that waste management is a massive industry. So like, I think waste management as an industry globally is about $2 trillion a year, right? Like it's one of the, death and waste are like the two things that human beings have. Like it's 100% common on the planet. Like as a species, we create a lot of waste. Like, we're the only species that actually does. We don't live in concert or balance with nature. And we die. Like all living creatures die. Like those are the only two things that we do super consistently across all nations, all people, all races. We do that. So waste management, massive industry. And I talked to my board and our investors. I'm like, what would it cost to build like really big, industrial compost facilities? And the answer was like about $120 million every facility, right? Like they're big infrastructure costs. So it's obviously we weren't going to do that. That's too much money for us. Then I started looking around at like which other companies have solved for like big infrastructure gaps. And that's when it kind of hit me that that's exactly what Tesla did, right? Like I'm old enough to remember that the electric car, the concept of the electric car was around a long time before Tesla came along. The argument the argument against electric cars was there's too many gas stations, right? Like there's no charging, there's no infrastructure. So people aren't going to buy these things. They can't, quote unquote, fill them up as easily as you can a gas car. Well, Elon started building out huge amounts of charging stations, and he gave people, like, the more important part is he gave you a way to put a charging station in your house. Right.
Yeah.
And that's when it hit me. I'm like, man, there's got to be a way to take waste management as we know it and distribute that into homes. Like to get it out of this like hub and spoke model and just like spread it around. Right. And like minify it. And that's kind of where the idea for Lomi came from. Right. Like that was the beginning of it, which was like, what can we do?
That's amazing. Imagine having like a big Lomi. And I'm currently traveling, as I said, and I feel like I produce one bag of plastic every day. Like
it's wild.
This is like, even though I don't like it, I actually hate it, but it's hard not to. That's just honestly, yeah.
It's hard not
traveling.
To. Yeah, man. And honestly, like I love it when people are like, when we're brutal about the facts. Like this is it. Like we're not solving any problems until you acknowledge that there are problems, right?
Yeah.
And like I believe that that's step number one. I think step number two is also saying to people like, if we're going to solve really big problems like environmental problems or social problems, then the answer to solving those things can't be sacrifice rooted, right? So the answer can't be telling people you need to give up all this stuff. People aren't going to do that. Like we love like humans. There's too many of us now that have lived with extreme comfort for too long, right? Comfort and convenience. And we're not giving that up, right? So that means then that like all of these problems, we need to find ways to make it feel like people aren't having to give anything up, that they're not really having to change anything. They're just, you're giving them better choices.
Yeah. What I'm doing is actually when I, like, I don't, I do my usual stuff, but when I can buy the more sustainable thing, I do.
Right.
This
totally.
is like my personal solution
you can do
for this or my contribution. Like anything that is more bio-friendly, I buy it. And this is the thing.
And I think most people, when presented with the choice, right, and they clearly understand the choice, and that choice doesn't dramatically cost them more. So there's no like, it's not feeling like you're paying a green tax on everything.
Yeah.
I think most people will make that choice. Like,
I even am happy to pay a green tax. Like, not like as a percentage from my salary
but like
or my payouts.
It's going to cost more, right?
Yeah, but if it's like for a product and I know the green versions cost more, like for example, take eggs or something, or I don't know, beef or something, I would pay like a huge upside for that. Like
totally,
no problem.
Yeah, it's I think that right now we're in a place where like most sustainable product options, they do cost more. And I think that it's like anything else, right? There's economies of scale. So like as more and more people adopt these types of products, the costs of them are going to come down. And then that means that like, it's not just going to be for the wealthiest 1%, 5% of the planet. Cause like really, if we're at Pela, we're hardest on ourselves when we acknowledge that like our products are largely for people with money. And that's still it's a small fraction of the planet. Like it's a small percentage of the population that are buying our stuff. And if we really want to make like significant environmental impact, we also have to make products that are more accessible. And that means that we have to find ways to drive the price down.
Yeah, which is basically a bit contradictory to your basic, let's say, business philosophy, which is high profit.
Yeah.
Like your list of the 5 things, and one is high profit. You need to be profitable when you have a retail business. And so I can imagine like you would have to own the production chain in order to do that. Like you would have to kind of have control over the supply, so you can let's say, manipulate the price a little bit more.
Yeah.
Or have influence on the price.
Yeah.
So that you can figure out where just like Elon figured out, okay, I need the charging stations, I need superchargers, and I need the batteries. Like I believe he's the only car company, Tesla is the only car company that went into the batteries business, and the other car companies didn't. And this is
right.
so he owns part of, let's say, the supply chain, and this is this is the only way I can see it work. But then you need a lot of money, and your company has to be a lot bigger. It's hard to bootstrap.
It's really that's why we've raised outside investor capital. Like I bootstrapped my first company, and my business partner bootstrapped his first company, and like I'm a bootstrapper by nature. That's just kind of the family I grew up in. It's like you just figure it out. With Pela, we've definitely raised investor money because like these problems they're so big. And they require capital, like lots of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, the investment going into climate related stuff right now is much larger than the revenue coming out. It's a pain in the ass to be blunt. Like you have to raise money.
Yeah. Did you try to sell Pela cases only to like yourself online, or did you also approach shops or companies like Apple to?
Yeah. So case we mostly sell that online. We've actually had no success getting into retail. So the phone case industry is one of the most polluting and worst I've ever seen. So like most, think about it. There's like 1.5 billion smartphones made and sold every year. 80% of those are going to put a cover on the phone.
Yeah.
So like 1 billion plus phone cases are bought every single year. But the way the industry works is, it's all of the like telecoms, so like think Swisscom or Verizon or T-Mobile. Here in Canada, it's TELUS and Bell. Like all of those mobile companies, they go to phone case companies and they say, whatever we don't sell, you need to take it back because there's a new phone coming every 12 months. So the phone case companies actually wind up producing, somewhere between 2 and 5 times more cases than are actually sold. So like you're talking about billions of phone cases manufactured every year, and a good chunk of them actually just get literally burned. Like they just throw them in a dumpster and burn these things because they can't be recycled. All of this is because just like extended warranties, these companies make a lot of money selling phone cases, right? And we have had no luck trying to get them to sell a better product and be less wasteful. And like, they don't care. They make way too much money selling phone cases to do the right thing. It is just about the bottom line. Like 100%. It's the worst industry I think I've ever seen in terms of like retail, wholesale relationship, by far the worst. Like worse than toys, worse than man, I've sold so much into so many different channels. This is the worst one. So we've formally we don't even try to go after retail in Pela case because like the industry is broken. It's really broken.
Wow.
Yeah. It is like as close to evil as you can get in business.
Yeah. And people like, there's also like in popular culture, a very wasteful culture. For example, when I look at clothes, there is usually in the old days, I'm 41 currently. In the old days, we used to buy clothes and we would wear them like for a few years. And I still do, honestly. When I buy clothes, I don't throw them away. But like there's this phenomenon called fashion to go, where people just buy something and they throw it away after the season, or maybe they wear it just once because it's so cheap. And H&M and Zara and all these companies, and they're like trying to, they're trying to bring a new collection like every other week or so. Or this is totally crazy.
The fashion industry, and this is what I mean. Like, go back to my statement where I think like all entrepreneurs are going to be climate entrepreneurs. Like environmental entrepreneurs, like they were all going to be whether you're there now or you don't think you'll ever get there, you're totally going to get there because consumers are going to demand it, right? Governments are going to demand it. What you're hitting on is fashion. Fashion has like a tremendous amount of opportunity because very few industries produce the level of waste that fashion does. And fashion, like clothing, particularly like mixed material clothing. So like most stuff now that you buy isn't like 100% organic cotton and only 100% organic cotton. It's got like polyester mixed in or like some kind of plastic is actually mixed into the clothing. So what happens is all of these materials are very hard to recycle because they're actually mixed. There is no clean end of life. So when these companies are producing weekly fashion drops for style purposes, they're creating monstrous amounts of waste, like amounts that are actually hard to even comprehend at how much. But then reverse that. Like my reaction to that initially was, that's disgusting. But then the entrepreneur in me kicks in and says, holy hell, is there a huge amount of opportunity there? Like that is, like if you can go in there and start solving those problems, even little bits of them, like the entire supply chain in and around fashion and distribution, huge. Like you're talking about like totally new ways for consumers to work long term. As an entrepreneur, that's exciting.
Yeah, and I can imagine that, like if you could come up with like degradable material that people are anyway not going to wear forever, and that you can put in your Lomi box and then it'll degrade. I think that would be fantastic, like as a vision future. And like you could have a big box, not just a small one where just a phone case fits in or small things like that, but maybe a bigger one. And this could be a whole new industry. And I think, and fashion brands can also, and there's like right now there's an opportunity for businesses to be more eco-friendly, for example, for fashion companies, and like be one of the first movers, and maybe they'll attract some new customers with that.
Right. Yeah. Honestly, man, I think waste. Like I believe waste is one of the greatest business opportunities of our generation. Is just looking at where do we create waste, and as an entrepreneur, can you create a product in any category that actually just is the less wasteful version of that product? So now you're creating it's a whole new type of positioning. So and there's a lot of customers out there that will choose your product because they don't want to deal. People don't like waste. Like ask your friends or your family, like, does anybody actually enjoy throwing stuff out? Like nobody likes this. Online shopping, as great as e-commerce has been, the scourge of most people's lives is Amazon boxes piling up in their garage. Yeah. Right. Or all the plastic fill that comes in those boxes. Nobody actually likes waste. So like if you're an entrepreneur and I'm like, I have an idea every day where I'm like, oh yeah, this industry, you could totally do this just less wasteful. And this would be a better version of that product. Like any consumable, all of them can be made less wasteful. All packaging, less wasteful, like in every industry. It's huge. And it's still super early.
Yes. And I think especially from a branding perspective, it could be great for a company to be more, or let's say to be less wasteful or incorporate less like wasteful product or environmentally unfriendly material into their products. And I think there's like a big branding opportunity to do so. And I think that's pretty smart, like from a business perspective, also from a branding perspective, like what you did with Pela case, in my opinion, because you're one of these first movers actually leading with this USP, because let's be honest, there's a lot of phone case companies out there. Like it's very hard to have a USP. So
we were the first ones. Like we created a totally new way of looking at mobile accessories, and then like as people saw us do better, there's been hundreds of companies that have knocked us off, right? What's amazing though is that companies didn't think all they thought was, I'm going to sell a Pela case knockoff. They didn't think, well, what if I took what Pela case does and I applied that to, like, I don't know, bathroom products or kitchen cleaning? Like, you can do what Pela case does in any category. And yet the default is always to follow. I think for a lot of new entrepreneurs, it's like, oh, well, that's working for this company, I'm going to go do that. Whereas, like, the real opportunity lies in taking the lessons from another business and saying, can I apply those lessons to something new and novel?
Yeah, right? It's red ocean versus blue ocean.
Totally.
It's like,
that's like one of my favorite books is like Blue Ocean Strategy. And then, like, my other favorite book when it comes to this stuff is Play Bigger. And, like, just thinking of it, everything in terms of, like, how do you create a new category? Not going into a bloody existing one.
Is Play Bigger is it about creating new categories?
Yeah. Yeah, it's by a guy named Christopher Lochhead. He's actually got a wicked podcast too. You should check it out. It's awesome. But the book is great, man. Like, he's one of the best minds in marketing I've come across in my career, like, hands down.
Can you kind of summarize what's in there? I'm very curious.
Yeah, I mean, Play Bigger he's like I think he's called the godfather of category design, right? So, like, instead of thinking of things from, like, a unique selling proposition or, like, say, just purely positioning, his, as I understand it, right, the view is to, like, creating a new category is giving consumers, like, you're basically creating a new vernacular, a totally new way to think about an existing problem. You know, say the most famous examples are, like, Uber, right?
Yeah.
Like, before Uber, ride sharing wasn't the thing.
Yeah.
Right. But, like, Uber basically created a new vernacular. And now or Airbnb is another good one. Like, when you travel around now, you book an Airbnb, whether you booked an Airbnb on Airbnb or VRBO or another site, people still say Airbnb. Right.
Yeah.
So, like, the category is theirs. They own it. So the way I look at it is, like, and what I love about the thinking is you're going to the customer and you're not telling them, here's something better. You're going to the customer and saying, here's something totally different that you didn't even know existed, or that you didn't even know that you wanted, or you didn't even know how great this is going to make your life. That's category design, right? It's different, not better.
Well, I think that's very hard to do. I think
it can be.
Probably would need some would need some experience to be able to pull that off. If you look
I think it's hard to do, but honestly, like, but doesn't that if it's hard, doesn't that mean it's also worth it?
Yeah.
Like, the hardest things tend to be most worthwhile. So, like, and I'm not saying this, I definitely am an advocate. Like, I'm an advocate of, like, this, not, everything isn't for everyone. Right. So just because I like this philosophy of category design, and this is for me as an entrepreneur, not every entrepreneur is going to be out there saying, like, I need to go create a new category. Right. Being a Me Too entrepreneur is totally fine. Like, it's one of the best ways for people to lift themselves out of poverty. Like, there's so many great things about building business that are amazing. But if you are the kind of entrepreneur who does want to do something meaningful, like very impactful, then category design, I think, is the only way to think about how to create something impactful, right? Because it does require very, very different solutions to very, very old problems. Like waste. Waste is a very old problem. Like, it's been around a long time. And to go and create solutions around waste that are different from everything we've ever known, that's category design. Like, we're selling something that people have never even thought to buy before. But I also think, man, like, the opportunities in category design, it just excites me. Like, there's so much you can do.
That's cool. Have you ever tried to, let's say, gain political influence? Not as a politician yourself, of course, you're an entrepreneur, but have you tried to influence politics for, let's say, that cause?
Not yet. I think we're going to have no choice but to play that game. You know, as much as it often, I mean, I have not tried to do it yet. You know, we as a company have not, like, we have no lobbyists. We've not played that game at all. But I can totally see how there's a point where you don't have a choice to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason I say that is because, you know, when I look at the vision for Pela and everything we're doing, we're going up against some very big businesses that have been around a long time that do not want anything to change. And those businesses absolutely spend a lot of money on lobbying governments to create laws that are in their favor. So if that's true, which fundamentally I know it to be true, it's fundamentally true, then I'm going to have no choice but to also use the exact same toolkit if I don't want them to be able to, like, create laws that would hinder our ability to do better for the world. Right? Like, we already come up against them, and we're a small business. You know, like, I've got 60 employees, and I still run up against laws that were definitely created by very large companies, and it's obvious.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also mentioned that this is also an interesting topic to think about, like, especially in retail. I think online, both online and offline. So like, there's you say there's still a chance, or a good chance, for small business to create niches, or, let's say, very tiny blue oceans to go up against big companies like Amazon.
Totally. I mean, Shopify enables this every day, right? Like, Shopify is showing that, you know, you can, like, their whole thing about, like, arming the resistance, right? Like, it's a cute, very smart positioning statement for Shopify. But, like, you know, I've known those guys a long time, and they believe in their mission fully, in that, like, getting more smaller brands and more up and coming brands that create, like, better product, not just Me Too product, but, like, different product. That's good for the world. So, and I think that Shopify is, like, a great example of, and if you look at the companies being built on Shopify, they're the perfect example of what you just said, right? It's tens of thousands of small businesses creating their own little categories. Like, these are creators that are just, like, carving out their niche. And I think it's freaking wonderful.
Yeah. My platform is Digistore24, and we kind of do the same. So we're empowering small businesses so that they can, build bigger brands, and they can, like, my idea is to provide small companies with, let's say, software infrastructure. It's a software as a service, so that they can be empowered and use infrastructure that only, like, big companies would be able to finance. You know, this is like
Square,
very cool thing. It's very
like,
fulfilling.
Square is another example, doing like in finance, right? Like, not in commerce, but, like, Square is trying to build a finance company for the future. Like, I think that's super interesting. Like, how do you make, or like Stripe making like basic business building tools more accessible, like getting incorporated, or like all like these companies. I love this, like, where you make entrepreneurship more accessible, right, and cheaper. Like, so because, like, it used to be, like, when I first started my company, like, my first company, I look back on that now and I'm like, man, I was able to do that and do it with a lot less stress because I had the means to do so, right? I'm born in a first world country, raised in a middle-class family. Like, I had a whole bunch of, Canada has amazing social safety nets. You know, I had money saved up because I had a good job. Like, there's so many things that enabled me to go out and start a company. And, like, starting a company in 2007 was expensive. Like, it was thousands of dollars just to, like, get out the starting gate. And I think that if you can take that barrier of thousands and thousands of dollars and get rid of it or minimize it down to like tens of dollars or hundreds of dollars, you just made entrepreneurship accessible to a whole lot more people that do not have that kind of safety net. And that is a worthwhile cause. Like through and through,
absolutely.
It's going to be abused, but it's a worthwhile cause.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a big passion for helping entrepreneurs and for providing them with things that make their life easier and their businesses scalable and more successful. That's pretty amazing. Like we also have like a big affiliate network associated, so we can help leverage certain products. Maybe that might be also interesting for you to explore a bit more if you haven't done a lot of things with affiliates. Totally. It's great. Like me coming, like I come from Germany, and in Germany, it's also quite expensive. But the biggest problem for me, like, starting a company in Germany, even though I did, but that's why I can talk from experience, is there's so much bureaucracy around it. There's so many governmental organizations mailing you, and you have to deal with them. So it's crazy how much mail you get.
It honestly, man, you have to, being in Canada, my family is mostly Italian. They live in Italy, and I'm not an American. The thing I absolutely love the most about the Americans is they have made like starting a business and like trying so normal culturally, so normal and so encouraged to like get out and try. And who gives a shit about failure? There's like no social stigma around it. Yeah. I admire it so much because like most of my family being European, that is not the case. You know, like my family in Italy, they own a large business. And they've been in business for like 40 years because that's just what it seems like the Europeans do, is they pass it on from generation to generation. But there is definitely a stigma around failure in a lot of cultures globally, but there is not that in the States. You know, like
I love that about the US. I also love the fact that they appreciate sales. Like where I come from, Germany, it's like you're not supposed to sell. It's not okay. There's a stigma around the selling. Even if you're successful, even if you're not a failure, there's a stigma around sales. Yeah. So that's super weird. So people are afraid of.
It's so true. I think there's a lot that's wrong with the current modern day version of capitalism, but like at the same time, I think there's a lot of great power in commerce. And that we as a species and as a culture, as a society, we've yet to figure out the real sort of uses of commerce. You know, like how is commerce actually an enabler of human progress as opposed to like arbitrage, you know, like Wall Street, like who adds no value to the world.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's so much that is very great about commerce that I just think we're early days. And we don't know yet.
Yeah. And a fun fact is like about two big companies own pretty much all the relevant brands. One of them is I think it's Vanguard, and there's not BlackRock.
Oh yeah.
They own pretty much everything. Yeah. It's crazy.
BlackRock runs like $6 trillion in money. Like they own a meaningful percentage of like all the biggest companies.
So that's what I criticize about, like when it comes to criticizing our system. This is my criticism. Like there's too much power in those two companies. I think they're also making politics. I think they influence politics in a big way. I think they're kind of in bed with them, and I don't know. It's not. I believe in free markets. I believe in less regulations and little regulations, like making the life easy of an entrepreneur should not have a like too much hard life.
Yeah, remove the barriers.
But at the same time, like these world monopolies, like companies like Amazon, and therefore BlackRock and Vanguard are so powerful. It's crazy. Like, imagine if you would be like, if you would own Amazon, Google, Facebook, Twitter, all at the same time. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like the accumulation. When people talk monopoly, they look at Google or Facebook. Yeah, while that's true, there's another level to it. And this is like my criticism. This is like what I don't think is okay, because I think there should be competition, or more competition.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like, we need to make it easier. We need to make it less friction,
And those companies would have the power, like in a heartbeat, in my opinion, to force economies in the world to be more sustainable. Like, I don't understand.
I think it's going to happen. I mean, look at what BlackRock is doing. Like, they are carving out like significant, it's Larry Fink, right? That runs.
Yeah. Larry Fink.
Yeah. He started to verbally take a stance on social and environmental issues and say, like, every company needs to have this as part of their DNA. So, like, and now you're starting to see them create like environmental funds. And when BlackRock creates a fund, they aren't small.
Yeah.
Like, they're not here to write $1 billion check, right? That's not what they do. Yeah. They pour in and they go all in. So what excites me is, BlackRock and JP Morgan and like all of these monsters, these titans of finance, are starting to lean into climate. And I don't know where I heard this, but like, there's a good, actually no, I was talking to an investor, and he's like, look, he's like, I both love and hate this. I love it because it's going to normalize impact investing. And when you get the big guys come in, I hate it because 50% of the money they're going to throw around, it's just like, it's going to be like an elephant in a small pool, right? Like, they're just going to come in and smash about awkwardly, and they're going to screw up so much. The net gain is going to be better that they're here and they're playing. He's like, but the short term is they're going to just break a lot of shit because they're an elephant in a small pool.
Yeah, just
so
like
I like it. I think it's good.
Yeah, it's the same with the internet and Amazon. Like, Amazon is like, I think, ruining a lot of offline retail stores, like, big time, even on some online, I think. How do you see retail, like, currently and in the future? How do you future project it?
Oh, it's tough. Like, it's funny. I don't put a ton of thought into like, where, I mean, I guess I put enough thought into like, where is commerce going? Like, what is this offline online thing? Like, there, like, I think you're going to start to see like the concept of D2C or like e-commerce is going to invade pretty much every industry that touches a consumer. It's going to move from like just straight up like buying of physical goods to like the buying of everything, right? It's going to get like direct consumer ified, whatever the hell that word's called. So I do think that like COVID has basically accelerated both the demolition and the rebuild of retail.
Yeah.
And like, I have no idea what this is going to look like. There's a lot of really smart people thinking about it and working on it. But I think that retail needed a rethink anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like it did. It was like this slowly dying thing, and nobody likes to see anything die slowly. So like, it's kind of nice that COVID came along and just took a wrecking ball to so much stuff. Forest fires have a purpose. Like there's a lot of regrowth and rebirth that comes from forest fires. And that's effectively what the last like 18 months has been for retail.
Do you see the future of retail being like monopolies and big companies owning everything, including smaller brands? Or do you see like a mixed thing, like big companies, small companies?
I think as long as you have large companies, you will have small ones acting as the resistance. So like, I think that if you look at history, that's just like, there's natural cycles there. And there's going to be big companies like Thrasio is a good example. They're trying to buy up hundreds and hundreds of Amazon stores, right? And like amalgamating them all. And even though they're buying up hundreds and hundreds of them, and they're like getting very big by owning hundreds and hundreds of them, there's tens of thousands more that are independent. So,
Yes.
I think people are going to try it. There's too much capital in the world right now, like too much cash for it not to be tried. But I think for the most part, wherever there's an alpha dog, there's going to be underdogs trying to unseat it. And that is, it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you see, do you see the future of retail in the sense that pretty much all businesses have to be on and offline?
Yep. 100%. Whether they transact online or not, I think that is debatable still. But I think that, you have to be wherever your customers are. So if your customers are in like lots of different channels as a company, you need to think about those channels and how do you meaningfully show up and create the best possible customer experience, right? But then, that said, not every business is going to have customers in every channel. So
yes,
I map it out to me, it's just like wherever the customer is.
Yeah, that makes sense. As a last question, what tips would you give to a starting entrepreneur? Like what should he or she think about, like starting a business? What maybe just three of your best tips.
Okay, so look, I think if you're starting out right now, I would be looking at, and again, this is just from my own experience, so like for whatever it's worth, I would be looking at all social and environmental issues and figuring out like how do I like in a very authentic and meaningful way use business to help one of those issues. And the reason I say that is not as some do-gooder, but it's because I think it's good business. And I think that customers want it, right?
Yes.
Like they absolutely want it. So I think that is like the most common thing I'm telling younger, newer entrepreneurs right now is like, think further ahead, and think about like, what are the things that your customers are passionate about and how do you best align with like your ideal customers, like ethics and morals and passions and hobbies and all of those things, the rest of it is like, there's like a whole bunch of tactical advice, but like, I think that's the biggest one.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I keep talking about positioning, and I think this positioning first is the thing. And part of it is actually what you're saying, like, what kind of problems do I choose to solve is like a big part of the whole positioning, and how do I solve it, and how does it affect the environment and humanity. And I spend so much of my day thinking about not just positioning, but how to communicate it. That is like, that's my job. That's branding and marketing.
Yeah.
Big time. Absolutely. Yep. So I hope this podcast has helped you position yourself a little bit, like in front of our audience
fun.
Here.
This has been good, man.
This has been really fun. It's been really fun. How can people reach you or your projects if they want to get in touch with you or buy a Pela case or a Lomi?
Yeah. I mean, Pela is simple. Like it's just, Pela.earth. Like you can see everything about Pela at Pela.earth. That's our domain. And then I'm mostly publicly visible on Twitter. So just look for M Bertulli is my Twitter handle.
Right.
And I'm there. You can easily reach me.
All right. Thanks, Matt. That was a great conversation. Looking forward to the next one. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it, Sven. See you, man.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and never miss an episode of Svencast again.